Hey there, everyone. Okay, the time has come to finally tear down the Mouse Craftsman. As you can see, there's a toolbox where the engine used to be. I sold the engine out of it yesterday. So now it's time to tear it down and get at the valuable second gen steering to go ahead and put it into my racing lawnmower. So the plan is to tear both of these tractors down to exactly the same point. Obviously I'm not taking the engine out of this one, but I will tear it right down. I'm going to have to unfortunately unhook the choke so I can get the dash out. So, and there's a few things on here I'm going to be redoing, such as the dash, the kick panels, most likely all the parts from the Mouse Craftsman, the entire dash assembly will be coming over and onto the racing lawnmower. Also, I'm thinking about putting a handbrake on the racing lawnmower. I do have one. It's one of the engagement cables for a cable engagement deck. So I've seen it done where people have actually used them as a handbrake. I might actually end up doing that on this machine. I'm not going to get rid of my cup holder, but the handbrake will be going right around here. I do want to keep my cup holder. So then the clutch will just be clutch, no brake on it. It should actually help with doing burnouts and doing clutch drops. Yesterday I was driving this machine. It didn't do bad. I was trying to get a video of it, but it really did not turn out. I was having belt issues. So anyways, the video did not turn out, didn't even save it, and it got deleted. But unfortunately, I'm having some belt issues on this. I know what the issues are. It's an easy fix. And the nice thing is I got all the parts on the Mouse Craftsman to fix the issues on the Green Craftsman. And then the final plan with the Mouse Craftsman is the back half frame is being put onto my workhorse tractor to extend it out. I want to put a toolbox on there just for extra stuff, jumper cables, oil, stuff like that. And then from roughly the firewall forward is being saved, and that's being scabbed onto the Murray Monster. Basically to give me exact hole lineups to help reinforce the frame, and it's also going to give me the muffler support, which I kind of need for the engine that's in the Murray Monster. But that's pretty much it. So the center half of the frame is scrap. I'm going to hold on to the center half though until I get the new holes drilled on the Craftsman Racer, so I get the actual holes for the steering box dead on perfect. And that's pretty much it. This thing is there's still some valuable parts on here. The transaxle, the fuel tank I will be holding on to. I might end up running dual tanks on my my workhorse. We'll see. There's a few things you gotta work around when you run dual tanks. It's really not worth it. Says the Vanguard uses so little fuel, I only have to fill that machine up once every 6 weeks. And the fuel actually starts going stale before I actually have to start refilling that machine. But there's where we're at right now. I wish the hydros you could pulley swap them, but you can't, or else I would definitely be keeping the hydro. But it's just way too slow for me, and it just does not work out. So it's a parts machine. I do need the parts off it. And okay, I'm back. I'm down to the valuable second gen steering box. There it is. It's actually in really good shape. I don't think this tractor had very many hours on it. I think they put the ethanol gas in it. The engine screwed up. It rotted out the fuel lines, and they gave it to the guy I got it from. But and it sat out for about 2 or 3 years. But overall, I don't think this machine had that many hours. The back tires, they were junk. Actually, I still have them. I studded them. They need to be either slimed or foamed. Still actually had nubbies on them. This is one of the original front tires. It's still got nubbies on it. But the other front tire was completely shot. This one here is usable. And that one there came off that old John Deere I had. But it doesn't appear to have very much wear on the steering gear at all. But the engine bolts, when I initially went to loosen them up before I actually sold the engine, all but one were stuck. I actually had to spray them down with WD-40. Unfortunately, I ran out of PB Blaster, and I had to use Impact to get them out. I was worried about snapping them off. Luckily, I did not snap any of them off. But that's what happens when machines sit around. stuff gets seized, stuff gets fused, and that's also the big issue when you don't use anti-seize, especially if steel bolt going into the aluminum. And I'm thinking I might have some issues with the steering box, so I'm going to be spraying all these bolts down on the steering box. So that's cast aluminum with steel bolts. As you can see, this has a brand new fuel line on it, which will be saved. All the wiring is being saved. All that's being transferred over to the racing lawnmower. So the racing lawnmower is going to get 100% rewired. I'm not going push button. I don't do push button. I don't believe in them. They're not safe. So I'm not doing push button. I'm just going to be rewiring with the existing wiring harness. This uses the newer Craftsman key as well. So pretty much everything I have now uses that key, and I'm happy about that. I still have the old keys kicking around, but if I can keep everything using a similar key, it's nice. I also have a custom ignition that came out of that white tractor, I believe it was. No, sorry, it was a Husky. Came out of that Husky. I might end up wiring that ignition into this as well. I'm not sure yet. I gotta look into that. I gotta look into that ignition to see what it takes to wire that ignition in. I think that ignition is the issue why the Vanguard lost its charging system as well. I think they were putting juice into the charging system, and they fried the charging system. That's for a later video. But here it is. As you can see, the corner here is bent. I'm gonna have to take a sledgehammer and fix that because I do need that corner. The other side, it's not too bad, and the main part of the frame isn't too bad either. I can get that rear fender off relatively easy now. I gotta get all the hydro stuff out of this. I'm gonna save the cup holder, save the little pocket, save the piece that went around the fuel tank. I would love to find one of those fuel tanks and use this fender. I might keep it around, I'm not sure yet. If I can find a spot for it that won't get damaged, I may keep this fender. It's not rotted, it's missing some paint, but it's not in that bad a shape. So there we are. Okay, the racer is now torn down to basically the rear fender and the engine. The exhaust is still attached, the throttle is still attached, but just about all the wiring has been cut. This is going back to the seat safety. The engine harness here, I did save the plug. You may be wondering, why did I cut the wiring? This machine is getting rewired. I'm going to be using the newer harness from the Mouse Craftsman. It's actually in really good shape. It has the key switch that I want, unless I decide to upgrade it. I kind of mentioned it a little bit in the beginning part of the video, but not much is being saved on this. I might be putting the tack back on, like I mentioned. The horn button I don't need anymore either, because the horn I have now has a key fob that operates it. So my idea is, while it's apart, I'm going to do a lot of the wiring down in here, get the horn in, sorry about that, get the idler pulleys in. I do have a couple idlers I want to put in down in this area right here. As you can see, there's a little bit of something going on right here. If you remember, this actually has two frames. Whenever I built this machine initially, I cut out just about everything where the engine's sitting so I could modify it so I could push the engine farther forward. The engine would normally sit right about here, and it's forward by about a good 3 inches. That's so I could run the 8-inch pulley on this machine and keep everything under the stock hood. But that's why I have this a little bit heavier steel welded in. I might come in and clean up some of that as well. I do not want to take the engine out. So it's a big job to get this engine out. I don't know if the pulley's fused onto it or not. Get these pulleys off. They are a pain in the butt. As you can see, here is the old first gen steering. There is play in that. This has locked up on me a few times while I was driving this machine. I thought I was going to hit a car a few different times. That's the main reason why that's being upgraded as well. It's just for going fast and being reliable. First gen is not very good. It works, but it's not a very good setup. But this one here is surprisingly still reasonably tight. It's starting to get some wear on some of the teeth right here, as you can see. So it's time for it to be replaced. And I figure, why put another first gen back in? I got a second gen. I'm going to put the second gen in and do a good upgrade to this machine. Other than the steering, this machine, there's nothing really wrong with it. This machine's very reliable, and as long as the belt's working correctly. but I've never had frame issues. This does have the stronger front end on it as well. It had the bolt in, but the front end has also been moved forward. You can see it from this view a lot better how much farther forward the front end is compared to this machine right here, which is exactly the same chassis, but it's stock. So as you can see how much farther forward that front end is. For my newer viewers, I do have full videos on modifying this entire front end when I initially did do it. It is lowered. It doesn't look much lowered, but it is. When it's got smaller tires on it, you can really see how much lower it is. But I just can't find reliable enough smaller front tires. But there we are for now. I'm also going to be doing the turbocharger on this as well. Get that wiring in place. I basically want to get everything done while it's apart, and then start working on the dash wiring and get everything all wired back in underneath the dash. Get the steering done first, and then start moving to the new idlers, the new belt I'll be putting on. For that, I'll have to drop the transmission, but it's really not a big deal to do that. Since the fuel tank is drained, I can stick this thing up on its side without any issues. The engine does not leak oil, so other than the one valve cover, but when it's on its side, it doesn't leak oil. But there we are. It's all torn down. It's going to go back in the tent garage. I'll put the hood back on it, and it will be awaiting its upgrades. So I'll talk to you later. Please keep riding like always, and please comment.